Okay, so Ryszard, możesz uruchamiać, tak? Okay, so we can start our debate. So,
Dzień dobry, rozpoczynamy dzisiejszą debatę.
We are going to talk about a very important topic, which is issue about, what responsibility of European community should take for social and economic development of Africa.
Jakiego czego Europa nie zrobiła, jeśli chodzi o rozwój
very important topic and issue.
Europy i Afryki.
Today discussion, just a second. We have speakers and as well debaters. And first of all, I would have a pleasure, to welcome Dr. Justyna Mutale. She's founder and the president for leadership and of National Alliance of Women's Organization. And we are very glad, to have you at this debate and this discussion. So this entire debate as well will be attended by Dr. Marek Oktaba from the Applied University of Christian Thoughts in Poland. And we are waiting as well for Father Policarp, who is going to join us. Myself, I am a professor of Warsaw School of Economics. And this debate is connected to the 5th European Schuman Festival, and we are broadcasting these debates to many websites and many around Poland, to some countries in Europe. Because this debate is to the Conference on the Future of Europe. So we can basically have within all, internauts around 30 to 60,000 viewers. Some of them are going to join us. It's basically we record that debate, and I think that we can start our discussion from the point that Europe, if we are facing the conference about the future of Europe, so in my personal opinion, the Europe is not going to have a future without wealthy Africa, without a great condition and the wealthy of Africa, the future of Europe is not going to happen. So it seems to be that the importance of Africa from in many areas, not only economic area, is our challenge, is the challenge of all Europeans, and the challenge of different institutions at the European, in different, European institutions. I would just mention that, the Robert Schuman, we are basically going ahead with him and his ideas. And Robert Schuman was thinking about so-called the Schuman Plan for Africa. The Schuman Plan for Africa, a kind of a Marshall Plan, but he was basically, of course, considering something like that will happen, but of course it was not possible to be very, very fast process. So at this point, I would like, to first ask for the first speech our great guest, Dr. Justyna Mutale, and I will then give the responsibility for chairing this debate. Natalia, would you be so kind to chair and as well put some questions for all speakers and disputants so that we can have different considerations from different sides of that important topic. So, Dr. Justyna Mutale, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, and I'm highly delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and share my thoughts and my hopes, of course, for Africa, and of course the relationship between Africa and Europe. As you all may be aware, Africa has recently increased its economic power with the creation of one single economic bloc called the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. This free trade agreement will cover a market of over 1.2 billion customers, and it will total an estimated value of 3 trillion in combined GDP. And of course, this has the potential of increasing intra-Africa trade by over 50%. However, as you have said, and of course, as the plans were for Robert Schuman, the success of this bloc of the Africa Free Continental Trade Area will highly depend on Africa's ability to forge mutual and beneficial equitable partnerships with other regions of the world, such as, for example, the European Union and its members. With Africa now becoming the fastest growing continent.
Dr. Justyna Mutale and all speakers, would you be so kind to speak slowly so that our translator is able to translate into Polish, excuse me, because we speak English, but you know, we broadcast as well on many YouTubes in Poland. Thank you very much.
Do you want me to go back to the beginning?
No, just continue. Just continue, but only speak slower.
Okay, like I said, the success of this economic bloc of the Africa Free Trade Area of Free Trade Agreement will, to a large part, depend on Africa's ability to forge mutually beneficial and equitable partnerships with other regions of the world, such as the European Union. With Africa now becoming the fastest growing continent, it would be naturally advisable that Europe should be proactive in cooperating in the development of Africa. Because even prior to the economic disruption, which has been brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, the US-China trade war already posed a great risk to international trade. And as stated by Bloomberg, in reaction to the US and China trade wars, they said that this trade war between the US and China risked companies in Europe becoming collateral damage in a crossfire of new rules and restrictions that are not necessarily designed for them. This risk also, of course, naturally extends to the continent of Africa, because Africa is currently have China as the second largest trade partner. It is regrettable that Europe began to rethink its position in Africa only after the aggressive expansion of Chinese trade into the continent. Africa, of course, now presents a golden opportunity as a destination for restructured value chains, especially in the labor-intensive sectors. Because Africa's attractiveness for such investment, however, will depend on a combination of low-cost skilled labor and efficient infrastructure, areas in which the European partnership can have considerable impact. Targeted partnerships in both infrastructure development and knowledge transfer could lead to a more prosperous Africa, especially through the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement has already explained, and how much economic power that bloc will yield. A more prosperous Africa will also, in turn, expand the types of European exports that can be directed towards the continent, and therefore, a stronger Africa will benefit Europe and vice versa. The Europe-Africa relationship has already substantive pillars that can be deepened and expanded to form a stronger and more equitable partnership. These include migration, strengthening the technology ecosystem, building, expanding, and greening supply chains in Africa, as well as agriculture and, of course, agro-processing that goes with that. The transition perspectives of Central and Eastern Europe member countries can help shape the EU's evolving partnership with Africa. And in line with the ambition to move away from a donor to recipient dynamics towards a more equal engagement based on trade, investment, and partnership. There is scope for Central and Eastern Europe countries to find common ground with African states in priority areas of the EU-Africa partnerships, including digitalization, gender, peace and security, and civil society. So with a new post-Cotonou partnership agreement, which was, I think, signed in April 2021, and a renewed joint Africa-EU strategy in place at the moment, there is a lot of potential for a critical reset of the relationship between Africa and the EU. These instruments have been signed at a time. However, these instruments have been signed at a time of significant volatility for the European Union. We are all aware that even before the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the context was already shaped by the UK's withdrawal from the European Union and the redrafting of the EU's long-term budget. In addition to that, there's been the rise of populism and, of course, growing influence of the extreme right and the perspectives of the Central and Eastern Europe member states. Many of these internal dynamics have been concentrated around migration and the increased securitization of the European Union's development policies. However, the fundamental point still remains that this is a crucial period for the reshaping of the relationship between the EU and Africa. The EU-Africa relationships are dependent on an interplay of diplomatic, trade and investment, development and security affairs, all of which have been reviewed and redefined in the new post-Cotonou Partnership Agreement, of course with joint efforts to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. In contrast to the political climate when the terms of the first Cotonou Agreement was first concluded in the year 2000, this was the immediate post-war period. But now the EU is facing competition from emerging powers such as China, India, Turkey, the Arab states, and of course Russia. And the EU therefore may struggle to attract the attention of African states. The EU has also been absorbed by its own challenges. Notably, some of these are the deep global economic and financial crisis, which happened in 2008 and carried a major long-term consequences for the southern EU member states. In addition to a securitized migration crisis that has polarized the EU, and this has contributed to an upsurge in populist and extreme right-wing political forces, as I said before, and not least of, we must remember the Brexit process. So the already difficult context has been further compounded by COVID-19 pandemic, with the escalating transmission of the coronavirus, which has led to lockdowns, border closures in most EU member states, and this has caused many of the EU member states to become inward-looking. The new EU strategy with Africa highlighted the EU's perspective on key areas of engagement with Africa, notably green transition and energy access, digital transformation, sustainable growth and jobs, peace and governance, and migration and mobility. As with all other regions of the world, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic has taken a great toll on most EU countries. However, the pandemic is expected to have an even greater impact on developing countries, including countries in Africa. The impact of COVID-19 in Africa brings multiple economic consequences, which include the further decline of commodity prices and the overall volumes of trade and investment. This is coupled with potential increases in debt in the middle term, of course, a reduction in global remittances, an economic recession, an impending economic recession, and an increase in poverty and food insecurity, thereby putting further pressure on conflict-affected regions in the continent of Africa. At the same time, the COVID-19 context offers a window of opportunity. It offers a window of opportunity for the EU and African countries to build a partnership of equals, an equal partnership to show genuine commitment to mutual solidarity. There is also the risk that because of the pandemic, ties between African countries and the countries of Central and Eastern Europe will weaken unless the two regions are able to use this current window of opportunity to forge partnerships that can establish new supply chains for commodities, needed in the immediate COVID-19 context, or as part of the recovery from the pandemic. Even so, the accession of Central and Eastern Europe states to the EU has also brought significant opportunities for the EU and Africa relationships. The Central and Eastern European countries bring to the table their experience as recipients of development aid from the EU and other donors. That experience is valuable. It is valuable in furthering a better understanding of the effects and impact of EU support for democratization and development, as well as the limitation of current instruments and practices. Such experience has the potential to influence a move away from the traditional EU approach to relations with Africa. The Central and Eastern African countries could draw on their own experiences to lead the way in engaging African partners in the process of developing a new, more equal partnership. Drawing on the transition experiences of Central and Eastern Europe, members can help shape the EU approach to its relations with Africa in ways that better meet the goal of an equal partnership once again. Despite challenges across all policy areas, the engagement of EU member states from Central and Eastern Europe in sub-Saharan Africa presents significant opportunities as already expressed. And in an increasingly complex global environment, it is worth noting that, and it's worth mentioning that multilateral alliances are key for maintaining a global community of states that share the values of the EU, and not least in the context of changing transatlantic partnerships. If the EU aims to have a more robust engagement with African countries, then that role must be expanded to include different formal and informal ways of working together, including joint representation that would enable Central and Eastern European member states to build a greater presence in African countries. Furthermore, the EU's diplomatic service could implement special programs targeting diplomats, academics, civil society workers, and students from Central and Eastern European member states, as well as other members that want to expand their relations with Africa partners for placements, internships, and other roles related to its work with Africa. Such initiatives would help expertise among participating states and boost the potential for those participating states and their engagement with Africa. Increasing the capacity of Central and Eastern Europe member states to engage with African regional organizations could also help build opportunities for relationship building alongside engagement at bilateral level through the country's own diplomatic institutions or through the EU delegations. Political dialogue is, of course, would also be important to the forging of agreements, memorandums of understanding, and sectoral cooperation, as well as establishing a network of honorary consulates. These are all important factors that can help African countries and East and Europe and Central European countries to reconnect and better understand each other's perspectives, hopes, and needs. In addition, sustained partnerships between research and education, media and business, youth organizations, and national and local authorities all have a key role to play. Ensuring consistency in political relationships between Central and Eastern European states and Africa will also be contingent on finding areas of common interest, most pressing on migration, trade, and investment. The internal politics of Central and Eastern Europe countries demand a focus on migration, of course, which is also a key area of interest for Sub-Saharan Africa, given critical issues that are often in tension with one another, such as remittances and concerns about the loss of highly skilled workers to more advanced economies. Moreover, the European Union is faced with developmental challenges in Central and Eastern Europe and can engage in a more equal partnership with its African partners by bringing together the European Union and African communities that share similar development challenges with the aim of fostering different forms of co-development. This could establish an equal footing for collaboration, as well as form a bridge between the EU's external and internal policies and funding instruments, and could enable newer member states to play a meaningful role in the EU engagement with African partners. Such an approach would also enable the development of capacity for engagement within Africa and Central and, of course, Eastern Europe alike. Finally, I'd like to emphasize that perhaps the most importantly, Central and Eastern European countries should use their own experience and influence within the European Union to ensure that its policies and approach to Africa reflect the goal of an equal partnership between the European Union and African states. They should employ their past history, which is almost a shared history, as Africa, as I said before, of being recipients of donor aids, and some of them of being having been colonized. So use that shared past history working with African countries, the transition experience and current development challenges to inform progress towards genuinely equal relations with the African continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mutale, for your great speech. I would like to ask two questions. We know that the joint Africa-EU strategy was adopted in 2007 as a formal weight of the EU's relation with African countries. It was agreed by the institution of the African Union and the European Union, as well as by African and EU countries. We also know that the strategy is implemented through periodic action plan. This year, 2021, the European institutions start to hold talks about the new action plan for Africa. So my question is how the European Union should support areas related to the development of Africa. So this is my first question, and my second question is about the European funds. We know that in European Commission, the people established the European Union Emergency Trust Fund for stability and addressing root causes of immigration and displaced persons in Africa. Was also created to address the road of forced displacement and also migration and better management migration. So my question is, what do you think about this kind of European funds? Is it helpful for migration in Africa, or do you think that the European Union should establish some other European funding for Africa? So this is my two questions for you. So please take the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And of course, the EU Africa strategy is a very welcome instrument. It's a welcome instrument in that it had the input of both the EU and, of course, the African countries and through the African Union. So Africa had to state what it is they wanted, what strategy, what kind of partnership, what agreement that Africa needed in this strategy. They had their input. It was not just put onto them. And like I emphasized in there, we need to move away from this idea of thinking that Africa needs aid. Africa does not need aid because Africa has all the natural resources that builds the world. So the only way that to help Africa is through trade, is through business. We exchange services, we exchange commodities, we exchange those things that build our countries. If you have the expertise, we've got the raw materials. So that is the way that we should, that Africa should work with Europe on equal footing, where it's an exchange of ideas, exchange of services, and not one imposing on the other, or one thinking that they are superior than the other. We both have something to give to the other. Europe might have the expertise to give to Africa. Africa has, of course, the raw materials and all the others. I've just told you about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area that is going to have about an economic block of $3 trillion. That is something that the European Union can benefit from. And if you know the history of Africa from the time of slavery, colonization, privatization, foreign investment, and all of that, the rest of the world keeps building their economies on the back of Africa. So now it is the time that Africa has to stand up and say, look, we have this to offer to you. You offer us this. Don't offer us aid. Because from what I know, from my research, the aid that is given to Africa is like 1/5 of the money that is stolen from Africa through tax dodging. So the aid does not help us. To me, somebody gave an analogy of a robber coming to me and stealing all my clothes and leaving me naked, and then they give me a pair of earrings, and I should thank them that they have given me those pair of earrings, because they have still left me naked. They've taken all my clothes. So that is the 1/5 of aid, international development aid, as compared to how much money is siphoned out of Africa through tax dodging by multinationals and all those foreign investment and international corporations or companies that come and operate in Africa. So we have to sit down and understand each other, and not to have one try to be cleverer than the other. So this immigration fund, it is good. It's a good idea that it will help. Does help those people that find themselves in those problems. But if all this was dealt with in the way that I have just explained, if none of the international companies or multinationals that operate in Africa take money out of Africa through the back door, if they do not demand and if they do not demand continuous tax holidays and 100% profit repatriation and all these gimmicks that take money out of Africa, this money can be taken back into Africa and help those people. Then there'll be no need for our people to be wanting to go to try and migrate out of Africa.
Yeah, that's great point, Dr. Justyna Mutale. I fully support you in that point of view. That basically exploring, that's in a big part of the approach of many corporations and the companies from Europe. The approach is exploring. We are in East Central European countries. We don't. We have quite very good conditions, but since we joined the European Union, we noticed that the approach of exploring our countries is the typical approach, and we observe that different tax vacations were the way how these different entities pull out from our countries many big funds, big money. So I really understand you, and this is a great point, and this clarifies that Africa. The Schuman was approaching in that way. Africa just like to have people from Europe approaching in fair way, just not exploring, not just, this is sometimes we call a new approach to colonize. Of course, they not invade your countries with a force, right? But in different way they influence. The capital power is probably more painful nowadays than kind of a military invasion. So therefore this is a great point. Many people in Western European countries, they say, yeah, we need to help Africa with aid, but we don't have enough money. I am saying no. The Africa is a great country. The Africa has a very big potential. You just need to treat them fair. That's enough. That's enough. And then both sides will, get appropriate benefits. Yeah, thank you for that consideration. And I see we have Father Policarp on screen. So Father Policarp, be so kind, to, get the floor and put your statement. Of course, Dr. Justyna, do not leave us. Stay with us and we will continue our consideration. So Father Policarp, the floor is yours, please.
Could you please switch on
your microphone, please, on. Switch microphone. Yeah, that's good.
Sorry, you get me now?
Yes.
Now it's okay.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor and our moderator for today's conference. I feel honored to be part of this discussion as we discuss the role of EU in the social and economic development of Africa. As a way of introduction, I'm called Father Policarp Opio. I come from Uganda, East Africa, and specifically from the Diocese of Lira, which is situated in northern Uganda. I am going to present a few aspects of this discussion of today. And as per Africa, it has a complexity of challenges, ranging from the smallest unit of a family to the highest level of a society. But Africa, as it has already been presented by the previous discussant, is well endowed and having so many potentials within it. However, even with this, does not stop it from experiencing certain challenges. And these challenges, we find it within the aspects of social, economic, political, technological, cultural, and climate changes, among others. So there is an urgent need of cooperation in order to respond to some of these challenges. And this presentation will try to explore fragments of such cooperation that EU can extend within their means to make sure that Africa improves. But like I said before, Africa's diverse population, if we're to say, is estimated at 1.2 billion people. And with this is endowed progressive population that can transform the continent in certain situations that can put it actually in order. So it is within this cooperation that such situations can be improved, as mentioned before. But what are these situations that we are talking about? What are the challenges that we are talking about? So one is that what is at the base of Africa's challenge is the conflict, different forms of conflicts that perhaps we need to look at it in a critical way. We can also talk of poverty, but this poverty, we need to look at it from the root cause. Other aspects of challenges can be seen within the unbalanced growth that is less inclusive of the local person. There is also a degeneration of cultural bond as a result of external influence. And this I'm also going to present some aspects of it. What is actually global now is climate change, which is not only narrow to Africa, but also extends to Europe as well. In Africa, there is a challenge which is more internal, a fixed mentality which is poverty-driven. And though this is motivated by the mentality of the people, sometimes it is also a way that is radiated from the aid that is sent to Africa. One also is the uncreative education system, which does not motivate the young people to be creative, but rather gives them the mentality of looking for collar jobs, which are actually few. And I'm going to, in my next presentation, try to present ways that we can help us to come out of such a situation. In the recent past, there has been another big challenge of family crisis. This is experienced in human sexuality, especially with the kinds of activism that has penetrated Africa now. And I'm going also to present a few aspects of this challenge of human sexuality. Now, for us to have this into clear perspective, I want to start by asking this question, because unless we understand this, then we also fail to understand to help the people whom we are thinking of them. Ontologically, I want us to look at who we are and what we are. And this is not only to look at who we are as Africans, but also to look at who we are as people of Europe. In the African understanding, we are gifts. Africans, we take ourselves as gifts. And these gifts are from where? We take ourselves as gifts from God. And these gifts, God has put us at the disposal of each other. And this is where the anthropological part of it comes into human relationship, the being. So actually, I feel so happy that we are discussing this topic within this realm, the ontology and anthropology. So one key aspect which we do not need to forget about is the human person. A human person which has a relationship with God. We may not really have a lot of discussion about this, but this is the African person. The kind of God that the African person understands is not very far from the kind of Christianity that eventually was embraced. So in this relationship, we understand the African person, especially from the first evangelization. And the evangelization came from Europe. And this was embraced in Africa. That means the faith that Africa has today owes it to Europe. Now I ask myself, and I challenge us, what is now the kind of faith that we have in Europe? Does it still reflect the first kind of faith that the people of Europe radiated to Africa, that Africans embraced from Europe? Or it has shifted goalposts that it is itself challenged in Europe? And if it is having that challenge, what do the people of Europe expect the people of Africa to do or to behave like? So I still take it back that we people from Africa owe our Christian faith to Europe. And you must be proud of this by way of example and by way of living. And this is the first challenge, that if at all faith in Africa is getting deteriorated, we must ask ourselves, what about the base, the root that this faith came from? Secondly, is the aspect of integration. I'm happy that the previous discussion already talked about integration, especially as far as immigrants are concerned. We have reached a level that we cannot run away from it at the current state of life. However, apart from integration, we must look at what are the root causes of this. Because integration itself is not a remedy to the challenges that we face today. But the remedy would be tracing back at the root cause to see what makes the Africans leave their beautiful countries to seek life elsewhere. And what are at the root cause of this, as already some of them has been mentioned already before, the issues of conflict, the issues of poverty, the issues of relationship, human relationship within the human person itself. However, you will bear me witness that this integration should not only be narrowed to Africa. Even within Europe itself, you'll bear me witness that some people need this help from within the European countries themselves. It is not news that some people also within Europe leave their own countries to seek better life elsewhere. So this integration is holistic, is something human. But we must look at, most importantly, what is at the root cause of it all. Another challenge that I want to present also in this discussion is human relationship. Human relationship in the sense that within Europe, we must first look at the relationship we have before we think of extending a better relationship to Africa. Because this is also where challenges come, in the sense that if, for instance, one particular country in Africa is aligned to getting assistance from another country, because of unhealthy relationship that already exists within Europe itself, it becomes a challenge. That if one party is already helping, then I cannot come in. So that means within Europe itself, there must be a watch of relationship so that Africa can be helped without any string attached. And this is equally important because it is at the root of also the challenges that Africa faces today, especially political challenges. Because like I said before, it happens that when one country already shows interest to help Africa in one way or another, because of political attachment and influence, the other will say, okay, if that is the case, then I decline. So the relationship within Europe itself must be watched so as to motivate a good relationship also within Africa. Now, there are prospects that becomes clearer when we put them into clear perspective. I was looking at myself in the last 20 years as a young adult, especially some forms of activism that has already penetrated Africa. We look at sexual activism. But I think this is in Africa, when I was a little boy, I never used to hear about some of these things. But this to deny the fact that even people who find themselves caught up in such situations are human beings. And they're human beings that should not be deprived of love as human beings. But this is not to say that the actions that comes as a result of some of this activism must be condoned in Africa. And this is where I seek help. That Africa must be accepted within their culture. There is a problem of cultural appropriation today, whereby the way I behave, I would love that somebody should behave the same way. This poses a challenge because our cultures gives us identity and we must be proud of them. Even within Europe, we do not have the same culture. Even within the same country, you will find that we have smaller groups that have cultures that define them. Our cultures gives us identity. It solidifies our humanity. And it is within our culture that we find relationship applicable and solidified. So if in moments whereby we see that there is cultural disparities, which is the case, especially in Africa, we must not force our own culture to be part of another. And this is what makes a relationship something that is workable, because we accept people as they are. So this is really a big challenge that is facing the world today. Sexual disparity, sexual challenges. And it looks as if it is at the helm of activism in the world today, which defines even the leadership of certain people. If you accept it, you become a good leader. If you don't accept it, you become a bad leader. It is defining what kind of leadership some people have. So this is yet another challenge that the EU must also come in to make sure that cultural bond is really taken into clear perspective as each people behave the way they do. They must be accepted within their own cultures. But also apart from that, we see that certain challenges within sexuality already find favors within the law. For instance, issues of abortion, which is another challenge in the world today. And many people would love that this should be taken in the context of freedom. Yes, in Africa, there is still value of human life. There is still value of family, whereby the children defines also that this country or this family is growing. And people are motivated as a way of also defining their identity by production of children. And so whatever is against production of children is something that is against the African culture and way of life. But there is pressure exerted also in this aspect. And how I wish EU could also try to understand Africa within this aspect of it, within this aspect that human life is cherished and valued. And there should be motivation and promotion of programs that enhance human life. There are other universal values like we can talk of rule of law, equality, human rights, which are good. But this also should not be taken out of context. It should be promoted within the African values and within the African cultures. For instance, I talk of activism to empower women, which was very good. But it looks as if this brings also a defeat in the game itself. In Africa, the women used to take control of food, for instance. All the women were at the apex of control of food. Food security was a reserve to women. But with the activism and empowerment, it left men also with the option. You see, the men now start selling stuff and drinking, and the women become more because the kind of act is not holistic. It does not encompass everybody. So in as much as some of this empowerment and activism are good, it must be taken within the aspect of African culture. And this will make it get more radiated and rooted in a better way. Promotion of promoting the spirit of appreciating the law. I love very much the nitty-gritty of how law is appreciated in Europe. I have not traveled to many European countries, but in my daily life experience, as I move on the street, as I interact with people, people in Europe do appreciate the law. And I congratulate the people in Europe very much for this milestone. In the same way, if it is possible, we would help people in Africa also to appreciate the law. It is one of the major challenges that we have in Africa. Because without the rule of law, without the guidance of law, then people are left to do their own things. People are left to make abuses are prompt to come up anytime. So EU should have this mandate to also make sure that in in all possible means, they help Africa to appreciate the rule of law. Promotion of research and innovation. It is not true that Africa is very poor. Africa, like the previous discussion said, is endowed with a lot of resources. We only have a limitation for value addition. We only have a limitation for more researches to make sure that what we have is actually expanded so that it benefits the local person in a better way. So we need to promote the aspect of innovation and researches in Africa so that people are able to expand the base of what they already have. With this, I now leave the floor for discussion. Well convinced that what has faced us in the world of today, especially considering the fact that COVID has shown us, then the human person is left with no option other than to cooperate and build a human family in the world of today than living in disintegration. Thank you.
Yeah, Father Policarp, your speech, was very incentive to me. Just a few sentences. The first thing, you said identity. Yes, this is a very center issue, identity. Do not lose your culture, your identity. This is something which is in Europe. I would rather prefer saying not European Union, but Europe, because Robert Schuman was not looking for European Union. Robert Schuman didn't like European Union because he was dreaming about the community of European nations. Since the European Economic Community was transferred into European Union, we are on the way to superstate, unfortunately, to superstate. And many countries are just, aware that this direction is just the direction which is basically destroying the identity, the culture of the individual countries. As well, the Brexit. The Brexit shows that the United Kingdom doesn't like, to be uniformed. So nobody likes to be uniformed. And this is this second consideration is that the organization of the United Nations, they put the agenda for 2030, the agenda for so-called sustainable development growth. And as we look back over last 10, 20, 30 years, so this agenda for sustainable development growth is just started 20, even 30 years ago. And if you look over at that time, you notice that we do not getting more balance, we are losing the balance. So the sustainable development growth doesn't exist. This is rather opposite. And on the first point of that agenda as a principle was highlighted that the human being is in the center of interest of the sustainable development growth. It is lie. It is not true. Human being, it means you, me, but as well every unborn children. This is a human being. Until now, in that, basically scientific books of the Organization of the United Nations states, human being is as well the unborn children. So over the world, over the globe in 1 year are killed about 50 million of children. And what I know, the many organizations, are just acting with a big amount of money everywhere in the world, as well in Africa, to just control the economy. What they say, we like to control economy by the killing unborn children. So we don't like that agenda of the sustainable development growth, which is against a human being. Is not that what we like. So, and this is a part of a super state. This is a part of a uniform. So Father Policarp, and as well, you know, I am referring to Dr. Justina, your great speech about, you know, that yes, the Africa is a great area of a great people. You can be proud because God did not forget about you. I mean, you have much raw materials, as you say. You have much resources. You are very rich, but over many, centuries, you were colonized. And now you cannot be colonized by the power of money, by the power of capital. So this is the entire truth. We should be aware on the very beginning if we develop any a discussion. And I like very much in the Dr. Justina, your statement. We like to be just partner, you know. We don't need your basically your kind of money which is given for us for free. We don't like, you know, the tax haven, you know, we don't like, you know, you just bring or force us basically for a tax holidays. So, saying that, you know, just I see the Marek Oktaba is just, you are willing to, Dr. Marek Oktaba from the Applied University of the Christian Social Teaching would like to raise a voice. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
No, just a question to both of you, Dr. Justin and Father Policarp. I think that in Eastern Europe, in this post-Soviet zone, we have a problem of colonial thinking, similar to what you have in Africa, where the elites are ashamed of their own country. They are ashamed of their own identity. So our lights have betrayed. And here are the sources of the corruption, sources of that phenomenon that Africa's riches are brought out in the back door, as Dr. Justin said. So the question is, how can we counteract it?
Yeah, Dr. Justina Mutale, the question was, to you, and as well Father Policarp. So if you like, just be some kind to respond, please.
Okay, yes, somebody did say that globalization brings with it the exploiters, the exploited, and of course the what are they called, the untouchables, those that are not even worth exploiting. So this is where all this see, Africa came very late to the table of globalization. We had our own way of government, we had our own way of trading, we had our own kind of economy until we were colonized and then pushed into this new way of doing things. So in coming into the new way of doing things, the people that were teaching us the rules of the game knew how to tell us how we could advance and also how we could stagnate. How they could benefit from us without us realizing that we are losing out. So when you talk about especially the money being taken, the back door, this information is there even in the United Nations. If you look in the records, you will find that the United Nations actually have these records of how many trillions of dollars per year are lost, Africa's economy loses through multinationals, through tax dodging. And of course, you know, the honorable pastor or priest said something about rule of law. But you know that, of course, the law, the people that make the laws, they make it to benefit themselves, because tax dodging is not unlawful. It is legal. It is a legal thing to do, to take money out of these countries. There's nothing illegal about tax dodging. So until such a time that these loopholes can be closed down. So on my part, in I think it's a few years back, in 2013, I was appointed ambassador for what was called the IF campaign. We called it Enough Food for Everyone IF campaign. And in that campaign, that is the year in which the UK held the presidency for the G8 then. And we were lobbying them to look at those policies that accelerate hunger in Africa and the rest of the world. And these policies, we had 4 major ones, but of course others, but they included, for the tax dodging, as you say, land grabs. Of course, aid was also discussed, and transparency on how these contracts are done. So we lobbied in that, and this resulted in like 2 years ago, when we had the Panama Papers and of course the Paradise Papers, if you read about them, where we had the whole list of who owns what in these tax havens. So that is one direction in which things went. In fact, immediately after the IF campaign, we had a summit in the UK to do with to talk about corruption. But do you know that even though African, for example, African leaders are always blamed for corruption, ask any African person in their own language if they have an equivalent word for corruption. It doesn't exist. If you have no word for something, it means it doesn't exist in your culture. So even corruption was something that was taught to us when we moved and joined this globalization system, this way of doing things after colonization and then getting independence and being told this is how government should be run. So the people telling our new leaders when we got independence, how government should be run, how a country should be run, they taught them also the tricks of the trade on how to do those things, including corruption. Because I always ask, when I meet different people from different parts of Africa, and I ask them, do you have the equivalent word for corruption in your language? And most of them do not. They have something similar, for example, that equates to stealing, but corruption is a totally different word from stealing. So there are all these things. So that is a bit that I did for myself as African ambassador and diaspora person for the Enough Food for Everyone IF campaign, is to lobby the G8 to revise some of those policies that may accelerate hunger around the world, which included tax dodging. There are a lot of ways that this can be done, but of course, who holds the power? Because the world just really needs to go to the core and to the real core of who presses the buttons on all of these things in order for us to really unwind and come back to the rightful place. Even with us dealing with the G8 was not enough. Of course, we had these lists where they said who owned this and who did that and who was in, who had money in those tax havens. But what we were lobbying for is to close those tax havens, to make tax dodging illegal, which has up to today not been made illegal.
Yeah, so this is, the Europe taught you how to corrupt.
Yes.
That's right. And, how we can ask a question, how Europe can help Africa. Europe taught Africa corruption. So So we cannot expect that Europe will learn, contribute some good things to Africa. Like in communism in Poland or in the Soviet Union, right? The corruption was assumed to be just as a normal way of living. This was not treated as something illegal. And I can imagine that, you know, some people in Africa, running a business, they just treat the corruption like a kind of a normal tool, instrument of running the business. If this guy, you know, from the great Europe taught us to do that, so we should believe in this. So therefore, yes, you are right. Indicating that, rule of law. Rule of law cannot be, something over the human being. Like, you know, in Europe as well, in the Brussels or just some leaders from Netherlands or Germany, they try to penalize Poland, saying, you know, you do not respect the rule of law. It is not true. So what they want to introduce, you know, the Dr. Justina, they want to introduce to Poland the corruption. Exactly. They would like to say, for instance, you know, the case a few months ago in Bulgaria, there is a really real high level of corruption, and the Brussels do not penalize Bulgaria because the leader in Bulgaria is linked to the these leaders in the Brussels. So this, let's say, this is the family of them. Like in Soviet Union, you know, when you were a member of the Communist Party, you could do anything what you want, and you were not penalized and blamed. So therefore, I think, you know, your contribution in that debate, and as well Father Policarp saying that if we lose that, you know, understanding about where is the human being, you know, what should be, arrangement of the entire environment around the human being, that everything should serve human dignity. So if you do not have that reference, sometimes you lose the reality and you go to the situation where you are basically destroying your institutions, your economy, your model of the your social model. So I know the Father Policarp wanted as well, you know, to respond to that question of Dr. Oktaba. So go ahead, Father.
Yes, I just wanted to give a brief when he talked of identity, because I made mention of this fact, because identity is also at the helm of development. Because whenever somebody is faced with that identity crisis, it leads to want to ask the question then, what is my position in the society? What is my position in the world? And so that identity crisis is what is eating humanity today. Like I said, it is not only narrowed to Africa. Actually, I have a temptation to think that in Europe, there is a big challenge now of identity, of relationship, that I may not be even aware of what is happening at the next door of my neighbor. And this is what the world seems to present as a comfort, that I need to be alone, I need my freedom, I need my life, I need to lead my life. So this is a kind of detachment from the human world. It is a kind of narrowing the perspective of human life to myself. In Africa, this is not the case. In Africa, the challenge is actually not relationship, because human life is lived together, is lived as a society. That is why in Africa, as a little child growing, if I was not going to school and any elder found me on the road, that elder could discipline me in any way possible, and it would not be a problem, either by beating me or taking me straight to school. Any form of discipline, that will not be a challenge, because as a child, I am for the community, I am for the society. I'm not only a child of my parents. So this kind of relationship is what still needs to be promoted, not destroyed. And we need to protect this identity because it defines who we are. It gives value to the human person. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask the question?
Yes.
Yes.
I have two additional questions to both of speakers, and the third one to Mrs. Mutale. First question is, how do you assess economic relations between the EU and Africa? Father Policarp, you mentioned about few topics as agriculture and climate change. Of course, it's very important topics for on EU agenda nowadays. We know that the EU has just established a new Green Deal, so the climate change and agriculture, it's really very important topic. So this is the first question. And the second question, at the end of the year, it will take place the EU summit between the EU and Africa. And I just read today that the most important topic that the EU will put on the agenda will be education, health and ecology, and of course migration. I also read that each month about 1 million Africans enter local labor markets without any education and skills to meet the demands. So I think that if we want to leave this continent out of poverty, we must empower young people with education, training, and good skills. So I would like to know your point of view on that topic. And the third question is to Mrs. Mutale. You are a founder and president of the Foundation of Leadership for Leadership. So I would like also that maybe you can explain a little bit about what is your topic, how you help the young people with the leadership and with the education and the relation between Europe and Africa. So thank you. The floor is yours.
Just let me say one word. You know, Natalie, you said about the education. So I think, you know, after what was said by Dr. Justina and Father Policarp, so I think Africa don't like to be educated in corruption, you know, anymore. So just let's consider very, sensitive that the Africa, they are intelligent people. They are great people. So they just like to create their own education. They do not like to be educated. And this is very important, approach to building the relationship. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Justina. Because of your first speech today, I understood very much, you know, how the reality in Africa is going around. So in everything what we are going to talk in Europe towards a relationship with Africa, This should be a partnership. I think we can ask African people to come to Europe so that Europe can be educated by Africans. As Father Kizito said, Europe thinks, from the very beginning in the colony, Africa was surrounded by Europeans. Currently, we had Germany, I think, was finally forced to pay big penalties for some, I don't remember which country in Africa. Namibia, when Germany had, the colony, they killed, persecuted people, and currently German Bundestag, parliament, I think assumed to repay the penalty. Of course, every human being is not a question of money. So this is very important. Nowadays, I think we can learn very many things from Africa. As Father Kizito said, the value of child, the value of family, the relationship between the family and the society. So this is a community, this is something, what you see in Europe, we see that the family are broken. The community in the family slowly doesn't exist. So how we can teach, these people in Africa? What we can, what about we can, educate them, So we can educate them, the European leaders can educate about how be more efficient in the corruption. I am putting this question and consideration by purpose, so that many, viewers of this debate, thanks of our speakers, will realize what is the real issue. So excuse me for that, a contribution, for interruption you, but now, yes, as Natalie asked you for response, Father Policarp and Dr. Justina Mutale. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Professor. I'll give a brief response, and then I give the floor to Dr. Mutale to also add up. One is the issue of agriculture. Surely agriculture is at the backbone of African development. The recent challenges in agriculture that I can spell out, which perhaps needs to be studied, is the introduction of genetically modified foods. Before, Africa used to have production whereby we would go in for organic production. If the yields were low, people would survive. Now there is introduction in Africa that you can have a better yield. And this better yield has a big challenge. The biggest challenge I see in this production of genetically modified food is that you cannot replant them. You cannot replant them. So you must be provided with the next of production. What if one day the people who give us the seeds for production tell us that they don't have seeds? What if it happens for 2 years and they tell us that, okay, we don't have this supply for you. We cannot give you maize. We cannot give you beans. We don't have them. Don't you think that is going to be the biggest crisis ever in Africa? Unfortunately, we are tending towards this. We are now neglecting the organic production because we want better yields, we want bigger yields. Yes, they give us bigger yields, true. They give us better yields, true. We can sell as much as possible, true. it is a time bomb for Africa. It is a time bomb for Africa because one time it can happen. The world today has many challenges. One time it can happen. That, okay, this year we don't have supplies for seeds for maize because what we from the fields now we cannot replant. Then what we just hear as death, massive death in Africa will happen. So I have a challenge as far as agriculture is concerned in that line of genetically modified food, which has destroyed the organic production that we used to have. The education system, I mentioned before. Yes, we cannot say that the type of education that we embraced before was totally bad. But we want to say that considering the current situation at hand, skilling of young people is an alternative which must be embraced. We have a bigger population of young people in Africa that if they are skilled, they can put their minds together and start doing their own things. They can be innovative. And this is the line of education that I would advocate for to be radiated more in Africa. Thank you very much.
Dr. Justin, your floor is.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to first of all go back to Father Kizito's points of making a human the center of everything, to be at the center of everything that we want to do. In Africa, we believe in, some of you might have heard of this, we believe in the philosophy of Ubuntu. This was propagated by Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. So that philosophy of Ubuntu, actually, it's not like compete with other people, just be good at what it is that you can do. But that philosophy offers us an understanding of ourselves. Who am I in relation to the world? And we also believe that a person is a person through other persons, and that we have this common bond that exists between us. So it also teaches, in the philosophy of Ubuntu, it teaches us compassion and wholeness, which provides us a proper self-assurance that comes with knowing that we belong to a greater whole. So no one is trying to outdo the person, because we are all together. We are all one. We are all one humanity. So that is what we believe in Africa. Before colonization, we didn't really have this myth of other than me or them against us and things like that. We are all just one humanity, and we believe that the suffering of others is our own suffering. So humanity was always put at the center of anything that was going to be done. That is under the philosophy of Ubuntu. So to answer Natalia's questions about access to economic relationships, like Father Kizito has said about this agriculture and genetically modified food, I already told you about the Enough Food for Everyone If campaign, where we found that there was this new idea of land grabs, where multinationals were grabbing land from subsistence farmers in Africa, and most of that land was under the pretense of doing agriculture. Then we also found that most of that land was taken away to grow biofuels. And we had a case study, for example, in Tanzania, where one land was taken away from the people who live there, very fertile land, and the people were moved away from that land because this land had then been purchased or grabbed by this multinational to grow biofuels. And after 5 years, this project failed. Two things happened there. When these people who were feeding themselves, when you talk about hunger and poverty in Africa, and sometimes which is attributed to perhaps the recklessness or irresponsibility of African people. So these people were moved away from their land, which this multinational had grabbed, and they started growing biofuels, and they moved the people to somewhere that was rocky and couldn't grow anything. In the end, these people had to come back to their own ancestral land and start working for this new multinational that was trying to grow these biofuels. These people ended up dying because of the insecticide, the pesticide that was used to try and grow those biofuels. And in the end, the project failed. But what happened was that the soil had been depleted because of so many chemicals that even when that project failed and they left, no one could live there because you cannot grow anything. So that is the thing to do with these genetically modified foods. Because I live in London, but I grew up in Africa, and I remember that, like Father Kizito said, when we grew maize or beans or whatever, when we had the harvest, we ate some and we kept some. We kept some to use as seeds for the next growth. Yeah, for the next growth. And also we used the same beans and same maize and everything that was falling there as manure. So we had compost, natural manure. We didn't use chemical manure. So when this chemical manure was introduced to us, it's been depleting the land in Africa, that once you use this chemical manure for a certain period of time, you can't go back and grow food again in that same area. And then you have this idea where you can't keep seeds of beans or maize or tomatoes or whatever that you have grown to grow them. You have to go to the shop and buy new seeds from these shops in order to grow. It's just something else. So that is to do with agriculture. We need to go back. We need to go back to organic farming. Because in fact, Africa still has enough land. Some of it has been grabbed, but we still have a lot of arable land. Yesterday, I was reading how much, for example, in my own country, Zambia, I think up to today, one person has got to themselves, according to the population, as in the ratio to how much land we have, 8 square meters per person. So that if we can just preserve that and not let it go away to this kind of genetically modified farming. Now, the issue of education is something, education and health is something very much at my heart, because I remember, of course, I was very young. I was just a few years old, but I was one of the beneficiaries of the what the new government in Zambia did when they got independence, because I was born a few years just before independence. So by the time I was old enough to go to school, we already had independence. So our new government had then, because now we've been colonized, we are independent, we are moving to this globalization, to this new way of doing things, and we need to be educated in the new way of doing things. So our new government came up with a policy, and I think this happened in a lot of African countries: free education for every school-going age child, and free health care for anybody. It didn't matter how rich you were. I went to the same schools as the children of the president of my country, Zambia, at that time. And my father was not a rich man, but we all mingled with the minister's children, rich people, because education was totally free for every child. And another thing that our government came up with was something that they had called Zambianization. So they wanted to train Zambians, educate them and train them to be able to take over from what then came to be called expatriates. But these were the colonial managers and policy makers and decision makers. So Zambia had started grooming its own people to eventually take over through educating them, providing free education, free healthcare, and free training. And Zambians, I remember at that age, I think some of my uncles were shadowing the expatriates or the people from the colonial government or whoever was running whatever industry that was, in the hope that eventually Zambians would take over those industries so Zambia can have the economy in its own hands. But what happened with that, before it could materialize properly, we had the structural adjustment programs from the IMF and World Bank and Washington Consensus. And of course, this then, what was the first demand from that structural adjustment programs? Cut down on public spending, cut down on education, and cut down on health spending, education and health spending. So then you will find that the generation around my age and either 5 years backwards and 5 years in front of me, we're very lucky. We got this free education. That's how come I can stand here and be speaking to you. But those that came after us, after the adjustment program, thing, you needed your parent one to have money. When we went to school, we even got free uniforms, free books, free pencils and pens and everything because the government wanted to educate its population. So when that was stopped by the structural adjustment programs from the IMF and World Bank and Bretton Woods systems and Washington consensus, you started then finding that some families couldn't afford to send their children to school simply because they couldn't afford a pair of shoes or they couldn't afford uniforms. So it's not that African governments did not make an effort, they made an effort, but global governance limited how much they could go through the structural adjustment programs. And the same thing with health for everyone. We had free healthcare in Zambia and free education for everybody until the structural adjustment programs. So it shows you that even when our leaders came into power, they had good intentions for their people, but global governance restricted how far that they could go. So going back to my foundation for leadership, of course, I'm a gender activist, so I advocate for the attainment of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls, trying to help the United Nations, the African Union, and any other continental, national, and regional initiatives on the achievement of gender equality and the empowerment of women. So the foundation, we offer training, leadership and entrepreneurship training to get women into political participation and, of course, economic empowerment. But on top of that, because I was so grateful that I got free education. So even though it's really funny how the whole global governance system works. One, they tell you to stop this, then they come back and are the same people trying to tell you, educate your people, when they are the ones who curtailed it. So what we do with that, we offer scholarships. We offer scholarships to underprivileged young women and girls coming from rural disadvantaged communities in Africa to access higher education around the world, because there are a lot of scholarships that are for free that they can take, but they have no idea that these do exist. So we source those for them. We have partnered with a lot of universities around the world. Now we found this complaint that, now if you're going to push the girl child too high, then the boy child will be down. And again, in the next few years, we have to be fighting for the empowerment of the boy child. So now what we do is that for every 5 girls, we have 1 or 2 boy children that we still give that scholarship to. And of course, there've been all these organizations that are talking about education and educating, and most of them confine that education from early years up to 12 years of education, which is the end of secondary or high school. But now we are in the 4th industrial revolution. So what are you going to do? How will these children participate in this demanding new global economy if they are only going to go up to secondary school? So what my organization does is to give them scholarships so they can go to university. I live in the UK, and I know that from the day a child is born, they are assured of a nursery school, primary school, secondary school, university, even up to PhD or postdoctoral. It just depends how far the child wants, but the opportunities are there for them. So how do African children then compete in this new globalized world if they are left halfway in their education, just up to 12 years of education, when other children are getting 22 years of education or things like that? So that is what my foundation does.
Thank you.
This is basically what I expected. That Natalie, thank you very much indeed. You put these questions. So these questions are in the very center the answers and the response revealed that these guys from Europe, they just destroyed the agriculture, they destroyed the education. So if you look in that great lady, Dr. Justina Mutale, and you realize that she was educated in a free after colony country. So you see, she is a very great, excellent educated. You see, this is an example, this is a proof that the education which was, initiated after the, getting the free country was made in the appropriate way. And then these guys with the money, they destroyed, they just limited. You know, how it is possible, you know, it's just like killing the people. This is like the killing the people, limit the education. How we can, imagine that somebody, you know, came to that conclusion. This is the mentality of these guys, you know, in the so-called neoliberal, you know, ideology. This, you know, what we hear today from our speakers, they just talk about this solidarity, solidar society, solidar economy, where, you know, the free, invention, the free creativeness of these people, you know, can create can establish, can develop, you know, education, agriculture, everything in the very efficient and the best way. So we can, you know, very loudly say, we don't like these advisors who are just, you know, limit the education, who are just, you know, what they did, they just limited the development of the Africa. How they have right today speak about any programs of education for Africa when they limited to do that? Do you believe them? I don't. This is a certain, a trick under the very big slogans, you know, to say, we like to, deliver you to the freedom. Yeah, they say, you get the freedom after the colony, but you get imposed under the limits. Another way, another form of, limits, limitations, you still are not free. So I really appreciate, you know, this debate today, because, you know, we are just looking what should be the sense of that, how this relationship between Europe and Africa should be developed. Because in most cases, you proved that any approach to Africa, even nowadays, is the approach of the mentality of the people from the time of the colony. As we in Poland, after the transition to the free economy, get, you know, different companies from the Western Europe. So many of them, after many years, they said, we approach to your country like to explore. We heard about that, a statement from a different French businesses. And we asked them, why you approach in that way to us to explore our country? So they said usually, yes, look guys, we were used over years to have a colonies. We were used over the years to perform in that way our businesses around countries and as well in Africa. So we are used to do that, and our mentality is in some certain way, I mean, destroyed. So we are not normally normal way approaching how it should be, and this is the basically a very center of the problem we have today. The question is how we can outweigh, how we can create a balance, so how we can outweigh to that, I mean, a way of thinking, to that approaches. And I think this is the debate which can, I mean, not, we still have a time, of course, which can go to the conclusions that we need to build some certain coalition, working on not how to teach Africa, people in Africa, because the Europe teach corruption. The Europe basically, the businesses are exploring. We need to ask the question how to basically teach how to teach different European companies to be fair, to follow the solidar way, and it seems to be that this is a very big challenge for that coalition. And my question would be to some certain question coming to you out of that considerations. How do you think? Do you think that the Trimarium, which is basically the group of the countries after the previous communist countries, which is Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, you know, around the 15 countries between the Baltic Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, how the Trimarium East, Middle and South European countries can, I mean, be a certain kind of a entity or certain kind of a organization which can create a balance and outweigh of this aggressive approach coming from West European countries to the Africa. If you can be some kind, you know, to try at least to respond to that, or just I would be very glad.
Just a moment. I would like to say thank you for your time, because I'm now going for Mass, and I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I look forward to the next debate. Thank you very much.
Okay, Father Policarp, so just pray for that Holy Spirit can send us smart ideas and power, you know,
Before the Father leaves, I just wanted to respond quickly to what these countries, Poland and all these countries you mentioned, should do. They should come to Africa with the spirit of doing unto others as they would like it done unto them.
Yes,
so,
that's great.
Yeah. So that you see it's recognizing the next person, that they are a person, like I said in the philosophy of Ubuntu, that I mean, in a way, we've almost been taken as if we are African people are not human, even with the independence and with some kind of level of education. There are all these things that happen behind those. You see, because, for example, up to now, Africa, we got what is called a political independence. We've never had the economic independence. And also, most of these decisions in global governance are made on our behalf. We do not sit at the United Nations Security Council. We've only this year had the first woman, and I think also what helped her is that she's African, but what helped her is also she holds a U.S. U.S. citizenship that she became in the 25 years of the World Trade Organization. We've now had an African there. We've never. She was also at the World Bank. And then I don't know who we have at very top levels of decision, agenda setting organizations that set the agenda of the world. And also talking about commodities, I did say in my speech how the COVID-19 impacted on the commodity prices of the commodities that Africa had. We don't even set those prices. They are set somewhere else where there are no Africans sitting on that table to decide that today the price of copper, which is Zambia, we are the second highest copper mining thing in the world. We followed Chile. Chile, I think, is the first one. But we'll be sleeping today, tomorrow, wake up and find that the price of copper has gone down. And each time the price of copper goes down, the economy in Zambia goes into the reverse. And we don't have the power to set these things. We didn't have the power to sit at that table of the structural adjustment programs that decided that we should cut down on education and all that. It was all imposed on us. So it's all of these things where you have this group of nations, and mostly it's the group of nations that participated in the colonization, still making the decisions on how we should live our lives and our children's lives and the future of our children. So when we are talking about the countries you've mentioned, the Poland, Hungary, and all these others, is that we share perhaps a common history that some of these countries were also colonized. Some of these countries found themselves being receivers of donor aid, and we have a few common things in. So if we are going to work together, we've got to come with that emotional intelligence attached to it. The idea of doing onto others as you would want them done into you, because nobody in this world wants to be treated worse than the person that is treating them. So that is, we have this commonality. So we should empathize. We should come with empathy and compassion, as I said in the Ubuntu thing, with empathy and compassion, and just realizing, I think, at the bottom of it, that we are dealing with human beings. And as globalization has taught us, the flapping of a butterfly in the very far part of the Amazon can impact on the whole wide world. So whenever, for example, now you did say something about migration, something about Robert Schuman trying to find a fund for migrants and things like that. What happens there? In all the wars that have been fought in this world, when one country thinks that they are the victor of that war, the negative impacts are both on the victor and the vanquished. Because the victor can come back and say, oh, we won the war, but what happens? There's an influx of refugees, for example, coming to Western Europe, coming to the UK, or even to the USA. And this impacts on their national budget, because now they've got extra people to try and look after. See, the whole thing just goes round in circles, as they say. What comes round goes around. And if the money is not stolen out of Africa through tax dodging, this money should circulate in the economies of Africa. There'll be enough money to have enough jobs and to educate and to look after all those young people that we see on television running away and suffering in Libya or suffering elsewhere. And also, if there are no wars at all, there was no war in Iraq, no war in Libya, no war in any other country, or the suffering in Yemen, there'll be no people running away to other countries because everybody would be comfortable where they are. So this is the attitude that if we are going to be working with Eastern and Central Europe, is to understand each other, that we are human and we need to deal with each other as a partnership on equal footing, and not one trying to be more cleverer than the other person, because it always bounces back, as we can see right now. Even with the COVID-19, we've been told it started in China, but it has reached the whole world. For as long as one part of the world is not settled, then the rest of the world still suffers indirectly in one way or another.
May I? Thank you, Mrs. Mutale, for a great speech and for your all answers. I have last question. If you have a chance to give an advice to the EU leaders before the EU-Africa summit at the end of the year, what kind of advice it will be? So what kind of topics they should touch, and what do you think about it? Thank you very much.
My message would be the same, is to tell them that Africa has a lot to offer to the rest of the world. We just need to negotiate and have a mutually beneficial relationship in how we are going to interact with one another. We don't want anybody stealing from us through the back door, trying to be clever in the way they craft all these instruments and all this jargon in their words, and that you find that the next day everything is being stolen out of Africa. Somebody is asking for indefinite tax holidays. They are asking for 100% profit repatriation, and they are asking to bring their own senior management so that the people in Africa that are working with those companies that come to Africa end up only doing 0 hours. We don't want that. We want to work on equal footing. We want a true partnership where both sides are benefiting from one another.
Yeah, I see Mr. Tomasz Pysiak, one of the participants, would like to raise an issue or question. Go ahead, Mr. Tomasz. Yeah, so it was a kind of a consideration. Thank you very much, Tomasz Pysiak. Is there anybody who would like to raise some voice or just ask a question to our great woman, Dr. Justine Mutale?
Maybe one more sentence in line what Mr. Pysiak said a minute ago. Let us build an alliance for life, in the time of promoting abortion, in the time of bringing men out of the topic, out of the development. Let us bring an alliance for life between Mediterranean and Africa. Coming to our roots, coming to our cultural roots.
Okay, thank you very much. So I would like to announce that on the 10th of July, we organize, this is on Saturday as well, 4 p.m. We continue the debate about that issue we are talking about, and be so kind, Dr. Justine Mutale, to receive our invitation. On that debate on the 10th of July, we are going to have some, I hope, politicians and experts from the Trimarium, from East European countries, and as well as some people from West European countries. And we will extend, that discussion. And as well, I would suggest, if you don't mind, Dr. Justina, to think about, to invite for that debate some other people from Africa, because I see you have very smart people in that on that continent. And I think that these guys, from Western countries who are going, to talk and, participate in the debate, they are going to have troubles with the arguments you have. So my congratulations. So I hope you can receive that invitation for 10th of July, Saturday, 4 p.m. What do you think about that?
Yes, that would be brilliant.
That's great, because, I think I became a fan of you, after so a great response, and the way you think, the way how you deliver a sense and understanding about what is going around in Africa, about, the mentality, the culture. Yes, this is, we don't like that. You became uniformed. Like, we are fighting against the uniforming the Europe by these guys who are willing to create a super state. And I could imagine what would happen if you would be uniformed, like in the template of some European or American people, it's so this would be a very big loss for basically the development of the humanity, development of the entire world. Therefore, I think myself, as well as one of the leaders of the Institute of Schuman thought, we are, a challenge by this debate to develop our activity in more wider perspective, so that to create more added value and learn from you, and by learning from you, just trying to go into the relationship in the way which is going to be friendly and as well as fruitful. And I really appreciate your presence today and about this debate, and the conclusions are coming out of the debate. So, Natalie, you would like to add something?
I would like to thank you, Mrs. Mutale, for your great speech and for your attending today with us. And I hope for a fruitful cooperation for a future with Institute. And yes, that's all. So thank you very much again.
Yeah, Dr. Justin, what would we like as a kind of a message, final message, yes, to send to us, to Poland? We love Africa. I remember when our John Pope II was visiting the Africa, and when I remember these pictures and movies, arriving to us, it was very touching for myself. It was, of course, many years ago. But up to that moment, up to now, I remember very much indeed what was happening in that time. And this is, I think, it's my heart is on the side of Africa. And one of the projects we are developing in the Institute of Schuman Thought, this, a project which is, in the area of the economy, is a cooperation of 3 Marium countries with African countries, with African businesses. So just understanding your point of view and sharing your point of view and our experiences under the communism regime, we think that this is worth to, develop this cooperation, as well the agriculture. We have many very, good areas in the agriculture industry, as well, we share your approach, I mean, related to that normal way of managing the agriculture you expressed today. So what would be your final message to at the end of that debate?
Thank you very much. I'm honored, first of all, that you invited me to come and speak here. And I'm also delighted that the Trimarium countries are looking forward to working with Africa. Like I said in my speech, if you saw, my emphasis was on these countries to bring their influence to the European Union of how they should treat Africa because of our shared kind of history. And also, yes, so it's, and also, like I said, to have this alliance of life, you said cooperation, solidarity, and peace, that is all very, very important, and just to treat one another as humans and to share what it is we are going to get out of the table, and to go at that table 50-50, and rather than 75 or 80 and 20 as things are currently being done. It is the only way that we can all progress together going forward. So thank you very much for inviting me here, and I'm also honored that you are inviting me to the 10th of July. I'll double check my, of course, I'll wait to receive your invitation, and I'll double check my diary. And yeah, if you want me to bring a few other people directly to this conversation, I could still do that. And if you just let me know how many of those people you would need.
Yes, please. So just, you can bring, you know, your schoolmates when you attended the grant school in Zambia, because, you know, I think they are all so smart as you are, and this will bring the quality of this debate to the very high level. Yes, thank you for that indication. Yes, we will, I mean, go in the direction to exercise the pressure on West European countries or some guys in the European Union to deliver this message about what you said. And I am, after this debate, I am going as well in the Institute of Schuman thought create a certain area of activity which will be related to your conclusion. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for all internauts, all viewers, our debate. As I said, it's going to be around probably 20 or 30,000 people around Poland and our neighboring countries, and as well on the Facebook of Dr. Justina Mutale, which we have broadcasted. And this will be very, I assume, good contribution to all viewers about the real picture of Africa, the real picture which is very exciting, you know, is everything, you know, what I am hearing from these guys, you know, in Europe, that they are going to teach you, they are going to, you know, teach you agriculture and, I mean, create education. Yes, they teach you the corruption, they destroy your agriculture, and this is, I mean, I am a person who don't like the destruction, you know. I would like to create, you know. So therefore, we find the common base, common page. So thanks a lot again, and all of you who attended, participated that debate, and all internauts. Good luck. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
How do I don't know how to.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution. Yeah.